Welcome friends, you're watching the Ruslan Belov channel, and today is May 24th, 2026. Last night brought events that are difficult to place alongside anything we've grown used to over these past years. Let's go through everything in order, with the details it deserves. But before we get into it, a quick word. If you're watching this and haven't subscribed yet, do it right now and hit the bell. YouTube actively suppresses the reach of military analytical channels. This isn't a conspiracy theory, it's a documented feature of how the algorithm works. Without your subscription and notifications, most of you simply won't see new episodes in your feed. Support the channel, and the algorithm is forced to work for us, instead of against us. A genuine thank you to the channel's sponsors and everyone leaving super thanks under the videos. That's real support that keeps this operation running at the pace and quality we aim for. Now, let's get into it. Massive strike, the big picture. In the early hours of May 24th, Russia launched one of the most large-scale missile strikes of the entire conflict. Speaking specifically about Kiev, this was, with very high probability, the most powerful strike on the Ukrainian capital since the war began. To put it in perspective, a standard missile attack looks something like this. 5 to 10 ballistic Iskanders, around 20 cruise missiles, occasionally 1 or 2 Kinzhals. That's become almost routine at this point, but last night, around 100 missiles, the majority of them aimed at Kiev. Over 20 ballistic Iskanders, 4 Zircons, Kinzhals, Iskander K cruise variants, hundreds of drones, and, as the main event of the night, 2 ORESHNIK systems, both at once. Maps that began circulating from early morning show the Russian side deploying virtually its entire strike arsenal. The only notable absence was the Ka-101 cruise missile. No confirmed use of those. Everything else was in play. The strikes were distributed across 3 primary directions. KYIV absorbed the bulk of it. Starokostiantyniv received several missile trajectories, and Bila Tserkva was hit by one of the Oreshniks. The logic behind this isn't hard to read. 2 days earlier, on May 22nd, a strike hit Starobilsk, practically leveling a college building and dormitory. By that date, 21 deaths had been confirmed. The Russian side didn't respond immediately. For 2 days, rescue operations were ongoing. People were being pulled from the rubble. Once that operation concluded and the last victim was recovered, the strike followed. The pause was deliberate. One brief aside, since we're on the subject of world events. Someone tried to shoot Trump again. They missed again. That's all there is to say on that. Oreshnik, what it was and why people were debating it. By the time this video was published, things had been clarified. Russia's Ministry of Defense confirmed the use of Oreshnik, and the Ukrainian side acknowledged it as well. But during the night itself, the picture was far less clear, and the range of theories was significant. Footage from one angle clearly shows 6 warhead blocks entering sequentially. Each block carries 6 submunitions, 36 in total. That's the textbook Oreshnik signature, no ambiguity there. A second angle captures the same strike differently. Only 4 warheads visible in frame, the other 2 simply outside the shot. So where did the doubt come from? The speed. On the first footage to circulate, the visual velocity of the incoming blocks looked different from what observers had come to expect from previous Oreshnik deployments. That gave rise to the theory that this might have been a modified Rubezh missile instead. Ukrainian sources were pushing that version from early morning. There were also rumors of a strike on Zelensky's bunker. I treated those with maximum skepticism, and I'll explain why shortly. The Antonov plant was also named as a probable target for the Kyiv strike. That version holds up considerably better. In the end, it was confirmed as Oreshnik. But the fact that experienced analysts started noticing discrepancies in flight characteristics is telling in its own right. There's now enough reference footage to make meaningful comparisons. Counting deployments from the start of the conflict. November 2024, strike on Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. January 2026, the evening of the 8th, strike on Lviv. And now 2 deployments in a single night. The first 2 strikes happened in cold weather. Fog, low temperatures, winter. These 2, end of May, nearly summer, warm conditions. Maybe that means nothing, but it's worth noting. Kyiv, why so much footage and what was burning? The strikes on Kiev used only conventional missiles and drones. No Oreshnik hit the capital itself. Hits on Bila Tserkva were confused with Kiev during the night, which is where the Zelensky bunker rumors originated. Zelensky posted a video response and visited strike sites in person. Subject closed. No strike targeted his location. Now, why did this attack generate an unusually large volume of footage? Several dozen clips, which is atypical for events of this kind. The explanation is straightforward. When around 100 missiles hit a single city, suppressing the visual evidence becomes nearly impossible. Something will always end up on someone's phone. Compare this to the January strike on Lviv. We saw essentially zero objective control footage from that one. This was a different situation entirely. The scale left no room for a full information blackout. What was burning? NASA satellite data, which tracks thermal anomalies in real time, logged fires at multiple locations: the Artem plant, the Darnitsky district, the 6th auto repair plant, where the fire was particularly severe. Footage from the scene is self-explanatory. The scale of the blaze was substantial. Several additional fire clusters in areas associated with Ukrainian Ministry of Defense buildings, effectively decision-making centers, plus industrial sites. Black smoke hung over the city from the early hours of the night until well into the morning. One key detail regarding the zircons: the Russian side had already redeployed bastion systems from Crimea to Bryansk Oblast. This directly cut the flight time of hypersonic missiles to Kiev. We're now talking 1 to 2 minutes. When the bastions were based in Crimea, there was considerably more reaction time, and the Ukrainian side had adapted to that window. That window is now effectively gone, and the strike effectiveness of zircon launches has increased sharply as a result. Bila Tserkva, Oreshnik, and the question of the target. Bila Tserkva sits southwest of Kiev. One of the 2 Oreshniks hit there. Published footage from multiple angles clearly shows the characteristic pattern: 36 sub-munitions, 6 warheads with 6 sub-elements each. Russia's Ministry of Defense officially reported a strike on decision-making centers. According to open-source information, the physical point of impact was the area of what appears to be a garage cooperative facility. These aren't necessarily contradictory. Such sites are not uncommonly used as cover for military infrastructure, storage, or command elements. Western monitoring channels broadly support the version that a military object was the intended target. Another version that circulated widely: the strike allegedly targeted an underground complex purpose-built for NATO instructors. Honestly, that sounds a bit stretched. Although, if over the coming weeks reports begin surfacing that several NATO officers unexpectedly fell off a cliff or died of cardiac arrest, and it wouldn't be the first time something like that happened, then yes, one could start drawing conclusions. For now, this remains at the level of speculation. We're waiting on specifics. Now, an interesting geographical detail. One of the overnight videos showing the Oreshnik was published with a caption indicating it was filmed from Donetsk. Pro-Russian analysts who specialize in missile strike analysis have confirmed this. The footage is indeed from Donetsk. But there's an obvious problem. The distance from Donetsk to Bila Tserkva is roughly 600 kilometers. Observing a strike on Bila Tserkva from Donetsk is physically impossible. That means the second Oreshnik, visible from Donetsk, hit something considerably closer, a frontline zone. Various locations are being suggested: the Dobropilya area, around Kostiantynivka, possibly somewhere toward Havrilivka or Serhivka. In other words, one deployment struck deep in the rear, Bila Tserkva, the second hit the frontline belt. The specific target has not been confirmed. Starokostiantyniv, strike on the airfield. A separate strike direction that night was Starokostiantyniv. Published maps show 4 missile trajectories running from Russian territory toward the city. The military airfield there is used by the AFU, Armed Forces of Ukraine, as a staging base for F-16s and Mirages, the aircraft that function as airborne air defense during missile attacks over the capital. Striking the airfield at the outset of the attack significantly degraded Kiev's aerial coverage for the duration of the night. The logic is clear: neutralize the interceptors first, then work the primary targets. Ukraine's retaliatory strikes. The Ukrainian side also launched a large-scale strike into Russian territory the same night. According to Russia's Ministry of Defense, around 300 drones were deployed. Hits were recorded in several regions. In Belgorod Oblast, near the town of Borisovka, local residents published footage from the scene. It appears some storage facilities were destroyed. Luhansk received a strike targeting an oil refinery. Detailed footage of the damage has not yet emerged. All of this, however, was almost entirely lost in the information flow. Today's media space was completely dominated by the Russian strike involving Oreshnik. Everything else dropped to secondary status by comparison. Energy infrastructure and Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. Worth separate attention, a Geran drone strike on a 750 kV substation in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. The line from that substation runs toward Enerhodar. Why it matters. Over the past several days, we've repeatedly raised the topic of a hypothetical Ukrainian offensive toward the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Such a scenario is theoretically possible, but it only makes sense under one condition: functional 750 kV substations on the Ukrainian side, which would be needed to quickly switch the plant onto the Ukrainian grid in the event of a successful advance. No substations, no point in advancing, because there'd be nowhere to connect the plant. Strikes on these facilities effectively eliminate the strategic rationale for any such push. In parallel, the Ukrainian side continues hitting Enerhodar and Oreshnik, the apparent goal being to pressure Russia into negotiations over what's being called a Dnipro ceasefire, a mutual halt to strikes on infrastructure on both banks of the Dnipro River, from Kherson up to Zaporizhzhia or beyond. That's the underlying logic behind all these moves around the river. Routes M18 and M14. On highways M18 and M14, Ukrainian drones continue their methodical campaign against Russian logistics. New footage appears daily: roadside service facilities on fire, warehouses hit, trucks and cars destroyed. On the Melitopol-Taganrog route, another batch of vehicles was taken out. The Ukrainian side is leaning heavily into this front for media and morale-focused victories. Every burned vehicle goes into the running tally. The objective is disrupting supply lines to the Russian garrison on the Oric sector. Russian aviation, in response, continues air bomb strikes on Oric and surrounding areas. Fighting on this axis continues. North, Sumy Oblast. On the Northern Group's sector, fighting is ongoing in Ivolzhanska. The AFU is pushing reinforcements there, and the reason is obvious. Losing that village means Russian units breaking into the Sumy forest, where dislodging them afterward would be significantly harder than preventing entry in the first place. Clashes are also continuing for Zapsilia and Rezne. A week remains until the end of May. It's entirely plausible that at least one of these three settlements changes hands before the month is out. Kharkiv, Kharkiv and the Veliki Burluk sector. On the Kharkiv front, no map changes in the past 24 hours, but there's important information regarding Kharkiv worth putting on record. Several days ago, a number of analysts reported that the village had come under Russian control. According to available information, no AFU personnel remain in the settlement, and Russian units are present there. No objective control footage has been published yet, which is why the maps haven't been updated. But that should change in the coming days. Footage will surface, and the corresponding map corrections will follow. On the Veliki Burluk sector, there have been meaningful advances. Sharing specifics right now would be premature, but by the end of May, or at the latest in the first days of June, expect good news from there. Keep watching. Kupiansk. On the Kupiansk axis, no changes. Footage arrived yesterday, confirming continued fighting in Kupiansk-Vuzlovyi. There's no basis to speak of the settlement falling under anyone's firm control. Fighting is ongoing, positions are shifting locally, but the overall picture is unchanged. Lyman. On the Lyman axis, the AFU made a serious attempt to advance. 2 heavy attack waves were repelled. The line held overall. There were some minor setbacks in places, but nothing critical. AFU armor and infantry took substantial losses, and the assault effectively ran out of steam. Map updates for this area are coming shortly. The real question is whether AFU command, including Drapati, will push again. In all likelihood, yes. The key is not to ease up after successfully turning back the first 2 waves. Kostiantynivka. From the Sloviansk and Dobropilia axes, silence. No changes recorded in the past 24 hours. Kostiantynivka, however, saw its first map updates in 3 days. The last time anything changed here was May 20th, when movement was recorded around Novodmitrivka. Today's changes are in the southern part of the city. The territory south of Highway N20-N32 has been fully updated and corrected. The road connecting the Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration with Kostiantynivka, Bakhmut and onward through Popasna into Luhansk Oblast has passed into confident Russian control. This is confirmed by objective control footage, including material published by the Ukrainian side itself, showing FPV drone strikes on Russian positions in the industrial quarter in the city's southern section. At present, Russian units control approximately 33% of Kostiantynivka. The offensive is continuing and the pace is holding. Kharkiv axis, Vozdvizhenka. On the Kharkiv axis, footage arrived yesterday confirming a significant development. Russian fighters are now engaged in combat in the center of Vozdvizhenka. This has been an extremely difficult position to crack. The defense has been stubborn. But once it falls, there are no serious defensive positions for the AFU all the way to Mykolska. That makes Vozdvizhenka the pivotal node on this section. When it falls, and it is a matter of when, not if, the next operational corridor opens up. We're watching closely. Friends, reminder, links to all my pages on other social platforms, including the official channel on Max, are in the video description below. That's where you'll find live updates and additional audio commentary on the most important developments. If this video was useful, hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel in the algorithm. Subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next episode. Take care.